What's up, FishTube? Bearded Bob once again. I'm gonna do a video today, just around the fish room, kind of doing some work and stuff. I figured I might as well film some of it. I already went in and removed. I had a bunch of hair algae, which is really super long in here. I pulled all that stuff out, you know, kind of like one strand at a time. You can still see there's a little bit left in there, but if you pull too hard, you start pulling up this whole sheet of moss, and I don't want to do that. There's also some, just some clumpy kind of hair algae down on the bottom there, and then just some on the back and glass or whatever. After I did that, I was like, oh, I should have filmed what I usually do. But the next thing I was about to do was do some manual duckweed removal, and you can see some hair algae growing in this tank. This one usually grows it quite a bit over in this area. I don't know if it likes the heat or that there's not much flow over here or what. But then you come over here and then there's hair algae just growing straight off of there, so never know. But you can see there's starting to get some layering of the duckweed in big spots like this. If you don't get this out of here when it's all submerged like that, it'll start to die slowly. It's not going to kill all of it, but it'll die slowly, and you'll start ending up with little pieces of this dead stuff floating around in your tank, and it can really foul up the water. If you want to see what I mean, I've got some. This is where the goldfish is kind of sitting for right now, and you can see all the particulate just floating around. That's a lot of duckweed that he's been eating, or at least he puts it in his mouth and then he spits it out, and it gets stuck underneath all these plants and stuff that I have floating in here. This guy's got to get a water change today. He just had one about 6 days ago, but we're not going to wait any longer. I cleaned out the filter this morning and stuff, which is another thing that I should have filmed. But this one, it's a little more involved because I've got to use like a cup like this and go down here and pick up that sponge. When that sponge gets all full of all the gunk, all the duckweed and poop and whatever else floating around in there, then I start getting low flow. And you can see right now, even though I cleaned it today, we're still getting kind of low flow out of there. The bio wheel isn't spinning anymore, so we probably have to clean that one more time. I basically have to do this every day for his tank, just because this fluval stratum, he sucks it up and spits it out, and it slowly is grinding away and just becoming part of the water, which is really awesome. Makes it look a lot cloudier than it usually is. So I got to do that. I got to clean some duckweed. This is the big one. These ones, I don't know if you can see how thick it's getting in there. It's starting to like pile up, and the water's not moving very well in the front here because it's all getting piled up right there and blocking the flow. And this one is super fun to clean duckweed out of with a net, because usually these fish, they go right into the net, so you have to basically skim the surface, and it's pretty difficult. And then so if you've skimmed a bunch and you go back for another net full and you scoop up a fish, well, then you basically got to dump the whole net out to get that fish out of there, because I usually either throw it away or I keep it frozen in the freezer. So I keep it to make just some, you know, basic type fish food, vegetable based flake basically. So we'll kind of go over the manual removal. We had just showed the video, or just posted the video of the Hydra in this tank and stuff, and I've been watching these guys, and they will go and nip at it a little bit, but they're not just destroying it. So they're, you know, I understand that they're gonna get stung a little bit, but I feel like they're big enough they can take a couple of stings anyways, you know, before they really start getting hurt or anything. So yeah, I don't want to leave these guys in here too long, the guppies, because I do want the shrimp to breed out. So it's a conundrum. So same thing in here. I'll try to pull out some of that duckweed, and then on this side out over here, you can see it's pretty stagnant over on that side, so we'll pull a lot of that stuff out too. But I'll try to get the camera set up so you can see how I do some of it, and we'll go from there. See you in a minute. So let's see how well this works. We have you set up on top of the 55 gallon right now. I'll show you what I mean by skim the top of the net. So what I usually do, We'll start on one side and I'll just barely stick the net into the water just so it starts piling up duckweed. And I'll get it going and get it to one side. And then try not to squish any fish. And as you can tell, I've got 1,000 fish in there, so that's fun. So now we'll tip the net inside out. Oh, look at that, we got 1,000 fish again. Lots of fun. So another way to do this is, you know, just with your hands. That way you can kind of feel if you've got fish in there and throw it in the net, and we'll just keep doing this for a while and see how much of this we can manually pull out, you know, the super hard way. Alright, I'll be right back. That's about all I'm going to do in that tank. I got probably one good large net full out of there. I'm comfortable with that for now. It's just such a pain with all these little guppies in there to get it out. So when they grow up and they leave, then I'll try to eradicate this duckweed. But for now, that's that. So let's get this closed. We're gonna... Oh, there we go. Move down, see if you can find a place to set up this camera for this tank here. This one goes a lot easier because they're bigger. They kind of get out of the way. They're easy to see, and there's definitely not as many of them in here. This is the bachelor tank. So let me try to find a good setup, and I'll get right back on here. All right, we get a nice, clean, dry net. I sanitize these with just some salt water, super cured salt water, or super salty salt water, and then rinse it off really good, let it dry overnight. So there's a clump there. You always kind of float the net in here and make sure there's no guppies in the bottom of the net. This one goes pretty good. They kind of get out of the way, which is nice. Not always, but for the most part. A lot easier to catch duckweed out of this one. Alright, let me get this done and I'll get back on here quick. There we go. That one took a little bit of time, but we got 9/10 of it out of there. There's a little bit floating still. I like having it, but I don't like having it. You know how that goes. Every time you stick your hand in here, you're going to get a handful of duckweed. No matter what you do, it's going to be stuck in your arm hair. It's awesome. But it's very good at reducing nitrates in tanks. And especially like in a tank where it's completely overpopulated like this one here. It's nice to have that added layer of protection. Because you know if it's booming, if the duckweed is going out of control, that means that you've got a lot of nitrates in there. I did eradicate it at one point from this tank. But then my nitrates were creeping up into the 40s, 40 parts per million, so I started introducing a little bit in there. I just try to scoop out as much as I can, and I make sure I leave some to help battle the nitrates. But the plants in here, I just restructured it, so there's a ton of moss in here, which doesn't really eat up a lot of nitrates, but I mean, there's a billion shrimp in this tank, and there's also a billion snails, so I mean, here's snails. There's like a trail of snails right here. And then just a big cluster of them down there. But anywhere that you look in this aquarium, it's full of shrimp. I mean, check out this rock there. I mean, that's what everything looks like. So these guys produce a lot of waste, even for being shrimp. There was one point when I checked this aquarium and this hairgrass was going out of control, and it was over 80 parts per million nitrate. So 50% water change one day dropped down to 40, and then 50% again dropped it down to 20, and 20 is the max that I'd like to keep it at. Anything more than that, you know, it's not really helping the plants any, and there's a pretty good possibility that you don't have all the nutrients the plants need anyways. Here, I gotta pause this for 1 sec. Alright, so we'll keep going. I'm going to leave this little bit of duckweed that's in this tank, and you know, at certain times, if I notice a big conglomerate of snails like this, I'll either give them a little squish, you know, feed the shrimp a little bit, or get in here with a net and try to just scoop out as many snails as I can. get rid of them. The goldfish here, he'll eat them. He eats all the snails. This tank used to be overrun with them. I haven't seen one since I put him in here. He loves his snails. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, the other thing is, most times when I pull duckweed out of tanks, I can put a bunch of it in here. Because one, it'll help reduce the nitrates, which is good. And number two, he'll just eat it. You know, if you don't feed him flake food or whatever for a couple of days, he'll just go nuts on the stuff and eat it. The only issue with that is you get all this particulate matter in there from duckweed that got trapped under stuff and died, or that he mouthed and spit back out. But yeah, it's okay. It's okay with me. Yeah, he gets a 50% water change once a week, no matter what he's in, this tank included. So we're gonna keep going. I'm gonna try to get you set up and see if we can get a shot of pulling this hair algae out and scooping some of this duckweed. It's a lot more difficult in this tank because there's a bunch of tiny shrimp. They just kind of hang out right at the top. There's some bigger shrimp too. You can see. Ooh, oops, went too fast. But there's one up there, just upside down, enjoying life in there. And then we'll pull this filter out. Actually, all I do, I'll show you what I do for that too. It's pretty easy. And yeah, we'll go from there. Let's try to get you set up. Be right back. All right, we'll try to do this without getting the phone soaking wet. But basically, you just reach in here, scare off any shrimp that you have, and you pull it, and there you go. There's a big clump of hair algae. I usually spin it a few times, make sure there's no baby shrimp kind of hanging on that, and that's that portion. Throw that in the garbage. And then we'll get in here with another clean dry net quick and scoop up some duckweed, and hopefully we don't get too many shrimp in the process. See a big clump of it right here, if I can get it. It's all kind of in this Hydra and stuff too, so I find it easier to just remove all the glass panels in the top. That way you're not getting snagged on everything. And then once you got these glass panels off, you might as well do a quick washing on them. So let's see, I don't see any shrimp in this little spot, so we'll get in here and scoop, and this is going to make a big mess for a little while. This duckweed will float down, it'll get stuck in the pre-filter, then you get your cool, you know, duckweed pre-filter. So I'm going to get to town on this, and we'll see you in a minute. And this side is always super fun to do because there's not a lot of flow, so you got to basically go in here and scare any little baby shrimp that are in here, make them not want to be up here. But let's say the truth here, and some shrimp are going to get caught in the net, some snails, some of that stuff. So that's why I do freeze a lot of it. I figured if nothing else, if I make fish food out of it, at least they're not just going to waste, going into the garbage can. So that's kind of my motto, my mantra on that. And it is what it is. You know, there's not too much you can do about it. Besides, you know, never get duckweed. I see all these people in Facebook groups and stuff asking, "Oh, could you send me some duckweed?" Why would you ever want duckweed? There's so many other things you could use for nitrate removal. So many other fast-growing plants. It's just not worth it. Don't ever get duckweed. Alright, let me keep going on this and I'll see you in a minute. Alright, we got a lot of that out of there. So let's go in here and I'm just going to manually remove this hair algae that's kind of growing on everything. And you can see it just comes off in clumps. And it sticks to everything. So, oops, scared some shrimp. Try to peel it off the glass. Make a nice handful. You'll notice you'll start pulling and it's like, it pulls like spaghetti. You'll find that it's woven itself right down into other plants and alright, a little bit more over here. And see a little bit more. It's hard to get it off these hard surfaces because it likes to stick. And then we'll make sure that this heater is stuck because it looks like it came off a little bit. Keep your heaters at about a 45-degree angle. Otherwise they don't work as good. There's something to know. Alright, one sec. Let me get rid of this handful of hair algae. So that's that on the hair algae. Now we're going to do a little cleaning on this filter. See, the glare is not really being kind to us right now, so what we got to do is got to pull this light forward like a couple inches, and we'll probably have to pull this glass panel forward a little bit more, be able to get that sponge filter out. And then here's all I do. So I keep the impeller and this tube are two separate pieces. Leave the impeller in there, pull off the tube, and we're gonna get some shrimp with it. They'll fall off as I pull it up, but make sure all those guys get off. And usually, you know, by the time you get up to this point, they'll jump off. We just pull out the tube out of there. We make sure there's no shrimp stuck to it, and then we can bring this over to the sink and clean it off, squish it around just like you would a normal sponge filter, a big one. Let me go do that quick, I'll be right back. Alright, I got this thing all cleaned out, ready to go back in. I put the pre-filter sponge back on there, and you stick it in the water and slide the tube over. And on these 100s, these ones built for 10-gallon tanks, they're not great. They take a long time to prime themselves. Some are worse than others. But all the other filters that Marineland makes, if you do it just like this, if you have the pre-filter sponge on there, and you pull off that whole tube and leave it plugged in, let the impeller keep turning, then you should never have any issues with the impellers shutting off. I've noticed that sometimes if you shut them off, sometimes there's something stuck in there or whatever, and while it was running, it was good, but as soon as you turn the power off, it had a hard time restarting. That's why I do it this way, because I never have any issues with the impeller not restarting. The other thing is, I don't care what size filter you run, you should always run a pre-filter sponge, simply because it prevents any nasty stuff from getting inside your filter, so then you don't have to worry about it to begin with, you know. So snails, no snails can get through there, no shrimp can get through there, none of that gritty, if you're stirring up your sand substrate, none of that could get through there, you know, or at least not the bigger particles that are going to clog up your impeller. So give that a try next time. Get yourself a pre-filter sponge. They also hold a ton of beneficial bacteria, you know, so I could probably run this whole tank with just this little 10-gallon one with a bigger sponge on there, you know. So if these don't start right away, then usually what I do is I'll lift this tube back up a little bit, and so, yep, see, it just has a hard time restarting. The impeller's just not sucking enough up at a time to get it to work properly. Whereas the big ones, you can shut them off, plug them back in, and they'll restart their prime from nothing, you know. These 10-gallon filters, I would never buy them again. There we go. Alright, so she's starting. We got this lid and stuff back on, and normally, again, another reason why I like those pre-filter sponges, I never have to even like pull these out most times. On that goldfish tank, that's the only one that I clean regularly. The rest of these, maybe once a year. Same, you know, I got this bigger size filter on this side. I may clean one side, you know, every 6 months to a year. Whereas, you know, these ones, you know, they take a smaller sponge and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't like them. They add some flow. I like that, and that's the only reason that this little 10-gallon filter is on this side. Just because this side has zero flow, since the filter is all the way over on this side. So I think we'll call her for there for now. Maybe we'll do another one of these vlog style working in the Fishroom posts if you guys seem to like it. Let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Peace.